My spoiled son refused to get a job, scoffing. Why should I work when you have more than enough money? When I cut off his allowance, he stole my credit card and spent thousands, laughing. What are you going to do? Ground me? His smug grin vanished when the bank froze his account, and the officer said, Actually, you're about to learn what financial consequences really look like. I'm a 58-year-old father living in Des Moines, Iowa. I've worked as an accountant for over 3 decades, building a comfortable life for my family. My wife passed away 5 years ago, leaving me to raise our only child, Michael, now 24. Michael was always a bright kid, but over the years, he developed a sense of entitlement. He dropped out of college after 2 years, claiming it wasn't for him. I supported his decision, hoping he'd find another path. Instead, he chose to lounge around the house, playing video games and hanging out with friends. I provided him with an allowance, thinking it would support him until he found his footing. Months turned into years, and Michael showed no interest in becoming independent. Every time I brought up the topic of getting a job, he'd scoff and say, Why should I work when you have more than enough money? Fed up, I decided to cut off his allowance. I sat him down and explained that it was time for him to take responsibility for his life. He didn't take it well, storming off and slamming his bedroom door. A week later, I noticed unusual charges on my credit card statement: $3,000 spent on electronics, designer clothes, and expensive dinners. I confronted Michael, and he didn't even try to deny it. Instead, he laughed and said, What are you going to do? Ground me? I was furious. Not only had he stolen from me, but he also showed no remorse. I realized that my leniency had only enabled his behavior. I reported the unauthorized charges to my bank, and they froze the account pending investigation. I also filed a police report for credit card fraud. Michael was shocked when officers arrived at our home to question him. His smug grin vanished as reality set in. The officers explained the severity of his actions and informed him that he could face felony charges. Michael tried to apologize, but it was too late. The legal process had begun. The day the officers came, Michael's face changed for the first time in years. No more smirk. No attitude. Just shock. They asked him calmly if he knew why they were there. He stammered, No, sir. But we both knew that was a lie. I didn't say a word. I stood in the kitchen with my arms crossed, watching. They didn't arrest him on the spot. They said he needed to come in for questioning. He looked at me like I was supposed to do something. I didn't. I turned and walked back to my room. For once, he had to face something without me bailing him out. Later that night, he knocked on my door. Dad, come on. You really called the cops on your own son? Yes, I said without turning around. You're not a kid anymore. I said I was sorry. No, you didn't. You laughed. You stole. You think nothing matters because you've never had to earn anything. He mumbled something under his breath and stormed off again. But it wasn't over. A few days later, I found out the bank had frozen not just the credit card but flagged my entire account. Security protocol. Because the purchases had triggered fraud alerts and the investigation had started, everything I had, retirement savings, checking, emergency funds, was locked while they sorted it out. That hit me hard. I had to dip into cash reserves just to pay the bills. I had to explain to my employer that I might be delayed on some personal obligations. That was humiliating. But that wasn't the worst part. 2 nights after the police visit, I woke up to noise downstairs. I thought it might be Michael getting food, but something didn't feel right. I walked down quietly and found the front door slightly open. I looked around, heart pounding. The living room was a mess. Cabinets open. Drawers half pulled out. Michael wasn't home. I called him. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. Around 5 a.m., I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was the police. They had picked Michael up in a parking lot near a strip mall 20 miles outside town. He had been trying to use one of my old credit cards, one that was already dead. He had packed a duffel bag with clothes, a gaming console, and about $1,200 in cash he'd taken from a lockbox I kept hidden in the garage. I didn't even know he knew it existed. They brought him back. They let me talk to him for 5 minutes before he had to go with them. He looked angry. "Why are you doing this to me? You did this to yourself. This is your fault. You never taught me how to do anything. You just threw money at me and now you're acting like I'm a criminal? You stole from me. Twice. You trashed my home. You're 24. This is what happens when you keep blaming everyone but yourself." He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He just stared. It wasn't remorse. It was disbelief that he couldn't manipulate his way out of it. The next few weeks were hell. I had to talk to the DA's office. I had to submit documents proving the money was mine and that the charges were unauthorized. The worst part? Michael had used my name for a PayPal account and racked up nearly $6,000 in debt tied to my email. That was a whole new mess. One day I got a call from a lawyer. Not mine, Michael's. Court appointed. He asked me if I wanted to drop the charges. Said it would go easier for Michael. I said no. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I needed this to be real for him. But that call planted a seed of doubt. Was I doing the right thing? That same day, I got a call from my sister. She lives in Kansas City. She heard what happened through her son. My nephew follows local crime blogs and saw Michael's name. She said I should fly out, get some space. Maybe let Michael stay in the house alone and think about what he did. That was the worst advice I'd heard. Leave him alone in my house after he already broke into my stuff? No thanks. Then something else happened. I got a letter from the Department of Motor Vehicles. Someone tried to use my social security number to apply for a duplicate ID. I sat there staring at the paper for 5 full minutes. Michael again? Or someone he gave my info to? Now I was pissed on a whole new level. I called the detective handling the case. He said they'd look into it. I told him I wanted every possible charge added to the file. Identity theft. Fraud. Theft. He paused, said, "Are you sure about that, Mr. Harlan? That could mean jail time." I said, "Good." The next week, Michael called me. From jail. First time he tried to reach out. He started talking before I could even say hello. "Dad, I'm scared. I'm sure. I messed up. I know. But I need your help. I can't do this. You should have thought about that before you tried to scam your own father. You don't need help. You need to grow up. Please. Don't let them send me away. You're not my problem anymore." And I hung up. The silence after that call? It was the first peace I'd felt in years. 2 days after I hung up on him, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. I wish I had. It was my neighbor, Denise. She sounded nervous. "Robert, you might want to come home. The police are outside your house. Something about a break-in." I froze. I was at the office, trying to catch up on the mess Michael had dragged me into. I drove home, half expecting to find a broken window, or maybe someone had tried to squat. But what I saw made my stomach drop. Michael. Sitting in the back of a police cruiser, head down. One of the officers pulled me aside. He said he used his key. "But you filed for trespass 2 weeks ago, sir." I had, after he got arrested the second time. I didn't want him coming back without permission. The locks were changed, but he'd found the spare key from under the old mailbox. I forgot I'd hidden one there years ago. He knew every weakness, every soft spot I had. He'd let himself in while I was gone and was caught trying to steal more electronics and paperwork from my office drawer, stuff like tax returns, banking info, old checkbooks. I felt sick. The cops said they had enough to hold him. They also found messages on his phone, texts with some guy named Travis. In those messages, Michael bragged about how easy it would be to grab my info and start fresh. That was the moment something shifted in me. This wasn't just some spoiled kid stealing out of laziness. This was calculated. My son had been planning to disappear and probably stick me with the aftermath. That hurt more than anything else. I pressed for more charges. This time, the police didn't even blink. Then came the real twist. A week later, while sorting through a pile of mail I hadn't touched in days, I found a credit card bill under a name I didn't recognize. I almost tossed it, thinking it was junk. But it had my address. When I opened it, it showed charges from months ago: Airbnb rentals, Uber rides, meal deliveries, all from Chicago. I hadn't been to Chicago in over 10 years. I stared at the bill, my fingers going numb. I called the fraud department. They confirmed the account had been opened using my address, partial SSN, and a slightly changed name. I asked for the IP address used for the account setup. They sent it over. I gave it to the detective. 2 days later, he called me back. That IP address? It was my home network. Michael had set it up from our own house. All while pretending to be broke, playing video games, asking for more allowance, pretending like he didn't know how life worked. He had been building an alternate identity, using my information and address, hoping to get far enough to vanish before anyone caught on. I couldn't even speak. The detective said, "It's deeper than we thought. We'll add this to the case." The assistant DA called me the next morning. She said, "We can go for jail time, serious time. But we need to know, are you going to testify?" I didn't answer right away. Then came another surprise. My sister called again. She told me Michael had contacted her from jail. He begged her to convince me to drop everything. Said he was going to kill himself if I didn't. Said he was alone, scared, and done. That shook me. Hard. But part of me didn't trust it. Michael had always known exactly what to say to trigger guilt. He'd used it with teachers, girlfriends, friends, and now he was trying it on me through my own sister. I sat on the porch that night, staring out into the dark. Was I pushing too far? Had I become cold? Or was this just what had to happen to break a cycle I let grow for too long? The next morning, I got another letter. It was from Michael. A real letter. Handwritten. 10 pages long. The first half? Blame. Excuses. Rambling about how life had been unfair since Mom died. How I never gave him a chance. How the world was too hard now. Then halfway through, the tone changed. He said he didn't expect forgiveness. He said he hated who he had become but didn't know how to stop. He admitted he tried to start over with my info because he felt like he had no real identity anymore. Like he was a shadow in a house full of memories and pressure. And then he wrote one line that punched me in the gut. "I don't remember the last time I felt like your son and not your burden." I put the letter down and stared at it for hours. My hands shook, and my chest felt heavy. Was he lying again? Manipulating? Or was he finally breaking? I didn't sleep that night. The court date was coming up fast. The DA wanted a decision. Testify and push for maximum sentencing, or step back and let the system work without my involvement. I was caught between justice and something that looked like mercy but felt like surrender. I didn't know which was right. The court date came fast. It was cold that morning. The kind of cold that gets into your bones and doesn't leave. I wore my best suit. Not for the judge. Not for Michael. For myself. I needed to feel strong. Not like a father. Like a man who had reached his final line. Michael shuffled in wearing the orange jumpsuit. His hair was messy, face pale, like he hadn't slept in days. He looked around the courtroom like a lost kid. He locked eyes with me. I didn't blink. The judge started the proceedings. They listed every charge: fraud, identity theft, trespassing, theft, unlawful access to financial accounts. It sounded like a punch list for a stranger. But it wasn't. It was my son. The prosecutor laid it all out, sharp and cold. My testimony was next. They asked me to take the stand. I told them the truth. All of it. How I gave him everything. How I made excuses for years. How I looked the other way. How I tried to fix his failures with money, thinking that was love. How he smiled while stealing from me. How he laughed when I told him I was cutting him off. How he said, "What are you gonna do? Ground me?" The courtroom was quiet. I told the judge I wasn't there for revenge. I was there because someone had to stop him. If I didn't, no one would. Not the next parent, not the next stranger he tried to scam. It had to end here. When I stepped down, I didn't look back at him. Michael's lawyer asked for leniency. Said it was his first offense. Said he'd had a rough few years. The judge didn't smile. Didn't blink. Michael stood to speak. His voice cracked. He apologized. To me. To the court. Said he was broken, lost, scared. He cried. People in the courtroom believed him. I didn't. Because I'd seen those tears before. The ones that came right before the next lie. The judge delivered the sentence. 4 years. State prison. Mandatory financial rehab program. No early release. No probation. Michael's knees buckled. He had to sit down. I stood there. Silent. As they led him out in cuffs, he turned one last time. "Dad, please." I said nothing. Because it was already done. Weeks passed. People asked if I'd heard from him. I hadn't. I didn't visit. I didn't write. I changed every password, closed every account, filed every report to protect myself. I even sold the house. Too many memories. Too much anger in those walls. I moved to a small apartment near the river. Quiet. Clean. No footsteps in the hallway, no doors slamming. No laughter that sounded like manipulation. Just peace. I got a letter one day. It was from the prison. From Michael. I burned it without reading it. Not out of hate. But because some bridges shouldn't be rebuilt. And maybe, just maybe, I had burned it all down because deep down, I knew I helped build the fire. That was the end. And for both of us, the beginning of whatever comes next.